So yeah, bundling happens at build time, but it also is necessary during development. And so Webpack has something that's called the Webpack dev server. And so Webpack will take your configuration and it will bundle all of your stuff, and it will store the result of that bundle in memory, and then it will serve a static HTTP server in the location that you specify, and you can go to that and it'll send the bundle when it's requested. So like in your index HTML, you'll say, here's my bundle, and you request it from the Webpack dev server, and Webpack sends you back what it has in memory. And what's cool about that is when it compiles, or like when you make a change, it's going to recompile that bundle and it'll send the new version. What is even cooler about that is Webpack is smart enough to know what files are changing, and it will only rebundle those specific things. So it may take a while to get Webpack started because it's compiling all these different things together. But after you've gotten it started, you hit save on a file, you can't get to the browser fast enough to hit refresh before Webpack's updated it. So it's crazy awesome. Any other questions about Webpack's role? Kind of the overview. All right, sweet. Is anybody else like crazy excited about Webpack? This is so amazing. I can bundle my PNGs? Like, what is this? So, and actually, one other thing that I'll just throw in there is, well, I'm not going to throw that in there. It's just super cool. So let's go ahead and, I should explain a little bit about this, our workshop. So this is what I do. This is, if you're not familiar, this is source tree. It's just I'm not very good at Git, so sometimes I use source tree. So here we have our branches, and you should have pulled them all down if you fetched all from the remote repo. But you'll see we have these steps, and each one correlates to a particular thing that we're going to try and accomplish. And so if you fall behind, which is kind of likely because we have a lot to cover, then you can just check out the next branch and we'll work on that next concept, and then you can come back later because this is totally open source and you can access it, and I'm recording it. You can come back later and be like, oh, what exactly did you do here? And the other nice thing is you can kind of look at the diff and like, what did he change to make that happen? And you'll notice that I can't keep all this in my head, so I'll probably be referring to the diff as well. So yeah, awesome. Any questions before we get rolling? Great, let's do that then. So Webpack is really powerful and can function actually pretty well as just like, say, through a command line CLI, but for our application it's a little bit more advanced, and so what we're going to do is have a configuration file. So who here uses Grunt? Anybody? Wow, everybody. Who here doesn't use Grunt? Nobody. Wow. Anybody use Gulp ever? All right, Gulp. You tried it once. Okay. So a lot of people have moved from Grunt to Gulp because Grunt is like configuration. How would you say that your Grunt configuration is between like less than 500 lines of code or more than 500 lines of code? Way more? Like 1,000 lines of code? I got like 2,000, 3,000 lines of configuration madness, right? And it's really hard to reason about that much configuration. And so lots of people have moved from Grunt to Gulp because it's more program, like you can write a program and it's like amazing and it's awesome, and I totally loved it when I did it. And then when I went back to Webpack, I was like, so you're telling me another configuration file? Oh my gosh, this is dumb. I hate configuration files. So I have a fairly sizable application at my current job, I guess, not yet previous job. The application's like 30,000 lines of JavaScript, and the configuration file is less than 200 lines of code. And we're actually using Less and Stylus and PostCSS, all three of those for preprocessors for our CSS. We're using Babel and ESLint. All of this is happening just with Webpack. So it's kind of magical and awesome. And I hope that you guys all are like in awe too, because if you're not, then you're going to be like, what is this guy talking about? So let's go ahead and start coding. We're going to add a new file called webpack.config.js to the root directory. And this is where our configuration will go. The astute of you would have guessed that. And all that this does is it's a CommonJS module that exports the configuration. So we're going to say module.exports, or export. Oh gosh, I'm so used to ES6. Is it module.export? Yeah, that. And this is going to be our config. So that'll be webpack.config.js, sorry, and the root directory. And you'll notice I have an interesting code style. I don't believe in semicolons, and I like dangling commas. So, yep. We can chat if you want. I also like 2 spaces, and I think Jamin and Jameis like 4, and so I'm really sad about that, but that's all right. Okay, so the first thing that we need to tell Webpack about is we need to say where our entry is. So like in like a Java, how many people are Java developers converted to JavaScript fairly recently? Okay, so in Java you've got your main method, right? In JavaScript you also have your main method, and we call it index.html. For these kind of applications, single page apps, we're going to have like a single JavaScript file, and that's going to be our sort of our main method for this application. So if we look at the main.js, which is referenced in our index, we'll see that we have our require configuration. How big are these for people? Like 100 lines of require configuration, more or less, or nothing? Well, great. Okay, and then here we have our actual module definition. So this module, this is AMD. If you use Require, you're familiar with this. And this module requires Backbone and views app and the router, and then it initializes some stuff for that stuff. So this is our main. This is what we want to have started from the get-go. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, our context for our application, all of our source code lives in this JS file, and then our entry, or our main, is this main.js. So let's set our context here first. Context is going, and we need to give it an absolute path, and so we're going to use dir name plus JS. And I don't know, I can't ever remember, so I'm going to say var path equals require path, and we're going to actually resolve these because I don't know how to program. Oh, did I say that out loud? Okay, so let's actually just make this big. Here we go. So this is the context. This is where our application code resides. And then our entry, as a relative path to that context, will be the main.js file. So this is our main method for our JavaScript application. And we're not quite finished yet. We need to say, so now Webpack knows where to get the files. We need to say where to put the files. And so we're going to say output, where the file name is bundle.js. Bundle.js is just a convention that has been developed by, I don't even know where it came from, but that's what everybody uses. And so, yeah, that's great. Okay. Everybody there? Great. I really wish that we could run Webpack right now and everything would work, but it's not going to. So, yeah, we have yet more to do. So let's open, before we get too far though, I do want to run Webpack and see the errors it's going to print out. And so rather than using a globally installed package of Webpack where like every one of us are going to have a billion different versions and it's just really hard to work with, we're going to use the locally installed version of Webpack. So every one of you, when you ran npm install, part of that process was to install this bin directory. And you'll see in there, you'll have a whole bunch of different files that are just symlinks to other files in your Node modules. One of these is Webpack, and another is Webpack Dev Server. And so these are actually commands that you can run in your NPM scripts. So that's another new concept. But let's go ahead and we'll add it, and then I'll explain how NPM scripts work if anybody is unaware. So everybody open up your package.json. Hello. They keep calling. And we're going to add a scripts object. And we're going to add a build script. And for this, it's going to be simply Webpack. And then we'll add a start script. And for this, it will be Webpack dev server. And I can't do my dangling commas in JSON. That just makes me super sad. And my get history is sad too. But, you know, what do you do? Okay, so who here is familiar with the NPM scripts? Awesome. NPM scripts are the bomb. So this is, I don't remember when it first came out, but it's been around for a long time, where if you have NPM installed and you have a package.json, you go to a directory with a package.json, and you can use any of these scripts in a command called npm run. And so you can say npm run build, and it's going to run this script. So we could say, actually, let's just use an example here. Hello, we'll say echo hello is one of our scripts, and so we're going to say npm run hello, and it's going to say, hey, I'm going to run this script. The script is echo hello, and this is the output for that script. And I could silence all of that extra cruft that npm does by adding this -s. And so what's really, this isn't all that fancy. Like, I could do echo hello, and it's actually fewer characters, so why is this cool? Well, the reason this is cool is because one of the things that npm will do before it runs your script is it adds this bin directory to your path, and so you can use any of these what are the module, these CLI tools in your scripts, and it will reference this one, not the global one that you have installed on your machine. So what's really awesome about that is you can distribute this this script that is like that works for everybody because they all have the same thing installed, because they all have the same package.json installed. So that is handy dandy. Does anybody have questions about that? Okay, so a couple of quick pro tips about it. So for npm build, you have to say npm run build, but there are a couple of shortcuts. For start and test, for example, those are two things that are really common, we use all the time. So you can say npm start, and I think npm s probably too, but you can say npm test, and you can also say run test, and you can also say npm t. And so all those different things work. So for us lazy people who don't like to type, I'm even more lazy, and I aliased nrt to npm run test. So there you go. You may see me do that occasionally. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and we'll run npm run build and see what fails. A ton of things fail. Oh my goodness. Let's. File name is not configured. Output file name not configured. So I think I led you astray. Yeah, let me look at. This is why I do this ahead of time. I think I got my Webpack config. So we've got path resolve, main, output, file name. It says
exports.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this is what you get for spending all your time coding in ES6. We're going to actually migrate our Webpack config to ES6 eventually too, so that'll be fun. Okay, great. So now we're getting an error that kind of makes sense. This error says there's an entry, module not found, cannot resolve file or directory main.js and JS. And I think that's probably because, I'm actually not sure what that is, but I noticed that I had the .js and I don't know if you need that. Let's try that. Criminy. Okay, let's see. What did I do different? Resolve. That. Maybe? There we go. Okay, great. So here, let me show you my resulting config that does work. And I want to see you all have this same error where it says module not found, cannot resolve module views app in this crazy thing. So you should get 2 of those errors. Raise your hand if you're getting those errors. Yeah, my Vim partner. Awesome. Okay, anybody else need a second? It's okay if you need a second. Okay, I'll take a drink to give you a second. Okay, great. So errors are great because they tell us in a friendly way, error, what we should do. So the problem is that we have this views app and this router's router declared in our main.js file. And if you kind of pretend for a moment that you're back in Node land and you're doing all of your common JS awesome stuff, if this, instead of a require with an array stuff, were simply require views app, where would you presume that this views app file is residing? Where would that make sense to be?
In JS folder views, and then
so you would expect that if it were a relative path, but you'll notice it's not a relative path, it's a direct path. So like similarly with Backbone, or if you did require express, where would express come from? Node modules, that's right. So because it's not a relative path, CommonJS says, and Webpack follows the CommonJS style, says, oh, this isn't a relative path, so I'm going to assume and it's in a modules directory. And a modules directory is the node modules. That's the default, and that's what makes sense. And so because we don't want to touch our code, because our code base is not these like 6 files, our code base is like 100 files or 1,000 files, we don't want to have to go through and like edit all of that stuff all at once, because that'd be insanity. We are going to instruct Webpack, hey, I know this is a little weird and stuff, but I'm going to actually have you resolve modules a little bit differently. And so what we're going to do, and let me remind myself, it is in the a new property called resolve, and that's an object. This is in our Webpack config JS file. So this object is responsible for helping us know how we resolve dependencies. And so one of the properties for this object, for this configuration, is modules directories, and this takes an array. The default for this array is node modules. And that makes sense. We want to resolve any non-relative path thing in the node modules directory, look for it in there, and once you find it, then that's what we're going to resolve to, and we'll look at the main and the package.json and all the magic CommonJS stuff. So for us, we want to, before you look in the node modules, we want you to look in our the root of our context. That's how our app is constructed currently. And so we're going to add something before node modules to be dot, which will be the current working directory, the context of our app, so equal to this guy. And now if we run npm run build, we're going to get a different error. And that is that the, oh sorry, let me pause for a second. Is everybody got that set up and you're seeing this error about the collection stuff? You're seeing no error.
I'm seeing a different error.
Oh, different error. I thought you were like, no, mine just works, and I don't know what's wrong with you. Yeah. So.
I'm not getting
it's giving like this.
view app JS. He's just talking about it down. Can you change the main?
Oh, path is not defined. Make sure that you require path at the top.
Did you change any other files?
Change the main JS?
Let me look at my diff really quick. So I've got. So I've just got this bundle stuff. You actually should notice that because we run the build. You'll see the Webpack config and the package.js. And the only thing that changed in package.js was this script stuff. So the relevant changes are right here and this file.
Okay.
And you run npm build or start?
npm run build.
Run
Yeah.
build.
We'll do start a little bit later.
I'm getting an error for views app.js and to-dos.js, collections to-do.js.
Let me see
I think
that.
they're the same.
Yeah.
You're getting that
The
too?
main error. Main.
Or is that the same?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So when I was demonstrating how CommonJS
Yeah, you
stuff
did
works,
those.
I made some changes. I changed them back. So don't make those changes. You should have no changes in the actual source code.
Yeah, I modified
You didn't?
it.
Oh, well, let me look at your error again.
Which one?
Yeah. Oh, okay. You're seeing. Yeah. Okay. That's a good error. Good error. Good job.
Oh, is it?
Yes. I don't know why we're seeing different errors, but that is a good error. That is a fine error to have.
3 errors, of which one of the errors is
Is
what you were saying.
okay. Great. I'm not sure. Oh, actually, I know exactly why I'm getting that error, or why I'm not getting that error, and it's because I have something installed that you don't. My bad. Apologies. Okay, so you are seeing a different error from me. Let's fix this one first, and then we'll fix your other error. Should have started fresh. Oh man. Okay. So yeah. So that this error is saying it cannot resolve module backbone local storage. And so if we look at our JS files and under collections and to-dos. Sorry, I'm hearing a lot of talking. Am I going too fast, or do people need help? It's okay to talk. I'm just like, it just means that people are like having problems or something. Okay. So if we look in our collections and to-dos, we'll see that we're requiring the underscore and backbone library and this backbone local storage thing. So who wants to take a wild guess as to why we're only getting an error for this dependency when we're not getting an error for this dependency and this dependency? So if you in your mind convert this to regular require statements, then what would cause you to get an error?
That is not available in all modules.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. So like if you were to misspell this or something, you would get that kind of an error. And so the problem is that the people who implemented this application, they came up with this fancy alias in their main. They refer to it as a path in Require.js. They said, backbone local storage, I want you to point to this module called backbone local storage with a dot instead of a capital, right? But the underscore and backbone and jQuery, those happen to be the same name as the module. So that's why we're not getting errors for those ones, but we're getting an error for this one because the module name is different from the alias that we're using to reference the module. And so what we need to do is we don't want to change our code because we probably have this in a million places. So we're going to instruct Webpack that anytime you see this, we want you to actually use this module. So that is going to happen right here in our Webpack config. Under resolve, we'll say alias. So alias is pretty much exactly like paths in many ways. And we're going to say, we'll just copy that backbone local storage. So we'll say anytime you see backbone local storage, I want you to instead treat it as if they had required this package, backbone.localstorage. And we can also give it a direct path. So we could say path resolved dir name, and we could give it like an exact file to resolve it to, which can be helpful occasionally. And yeah, so if you run it again, you'll still see your other errors, but you should hopefully not see that error in collections to do. I have no errors because I installed some extra stuff, and I'm sorry about that. So you should only have 2 errors now.
Yep.
Awesome.
I
Great.
have this entry module error.
Your entry not available?
Yes. Dot main.
Mm-hmm. And you have it too? Okay. Let me just take a quick look. Oh, right there. We're gonna put it right there. That should do it.
What was
Mine
the
is not
thing?
able to recognize.
Sorry? Oh, the problem was that I'm so sorry. I forgot your name. What's your name again?
Sheetal.
Sheetal. Sheetal had understandably mistakenly done this, and that's understandable because that's kind of how we started. When it should be JS is the second argument to resolve. So, wow. I kind of want to unplug that phone right now, but we'll just let it go.
Not able to resolve the text. Text.
Yeah, so that we'll take care of that one in just a second. Everybody else, you got it, good? Okay, fantastic, great. So let's. One other thing that you'll notice in this paths here is there's another module called text, and you're all getting an error that says can't find text. Well, text is a module just like any other module, but it's being used in a different way, and you've probably all done this in your Require stuff because this is how it works. You have this text and then exclamation point and then templates blah blah blah, right? Everybody's familiar with that? Okay, so in Require, I don't know what they call it in Require. I only used Require for a couple months and I never really understood what was going on. But in Webpack, this is called a loader. And so basically, if you were to say, let's require templates stats.html, like, what's wrong with this picture?
Not JavaScript.
Yeah, that's not JavaScript. Like, what are you, some crazy person? Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. So what we're doing in AMD land is we say, hey, actually, this isn't a JavaScript file. I want you to load this as a text file. And basically all that does is it says, take this file, turn it into a string. That's all I want because I'm going to inject it right here as my stats template. I'm going to use it, and it's going to be awesome. And so we need to do the same thing for Webpack. And Webpack is actually pretty neato with Require.js because it actually understands this same kind of syntax. And so all that you need to do is install the text loader to get Webpack to actually handle this file properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our terminal. We'll say npm install --save dev text loader. And if you run that, it should install hopefully quickly. I already have it installed, so I'm not going to run it. Pro tip, you can also do npm i-D, and that is the equivalent. So save yourself some typing. And yeah. So hopefully once you get that installed, you can go ahead and run npm run build, and you should get everything working and looking all pretty with this weird output with a hash and version and crazy stuff.
What should we install?
So it's npm id text loader. And so the save dev will save it to your package.json so that we don't like push code and nobody can install our stuff. Yes.
It literally is just translating.
Yeah, it literally, yeah. It puts it into its... Here, actually, let's look at that while people are installing stuff. If we poke around... Yeah, I meant to do this a little earlier. So while you're getting things installed and running and stuff, if you take a look at the bundle.js file, you're going to see this garbage of crazy JavaScript stuff. This was written by a guy named Tobias Coppers, and he's a genius and a half. I don't even know who this guy is, but he's amazing. But basically, this is his shim for loading modules, and in this particular instance, it's for loading modules asynchronously. So if we didn't have any asynchronous dependencies with that define with the array syntax, where that can be loaded asynchronously, then this would actually be considerably smaller. But yeah, so it adds that runtime to our file, and then we have all of this crazy like output code. But if you look really carefully and squint at it, you'll notice this is our code. And so if you look in the main file, this is the main file. And it's doing these Webpack require things, and we can do some stuff to make this output a little bit more friendly during development. And there's also like full source map support and everything. Like you'll never have a problem with Webpack output debugging that stuff. So then if we look at our bundle or our one.bundle.js, so Webpack created this because we have asynchronous, we're loading modules asynchronously. You notice this file is ginormous because it is loading in Backbone and jQuery and all kinds of other crazy stuff. Like it's making me sick looking at this. I'm sorry if anybody like that made you sick. But if you look right here at the bottom, we'll see number 11, module number 11. It's module exports equals, and then our string. And this is quite literally our template that we just said, hey, I want you to load with the text loader. And so when, if we look for Webpack require 11, there it is. So anywhere that this module is required, it's going to just basically require it, stick that string in there, and it'll pass it in as our stats template. So pretty fancy, right? It's kind of fun. So it's all magical and stuff, but we don't really need, like, we don't even care about this as much because Webpack just manages it for us, and it works really, really well. All we have to do is this simple 15-line configuration file, and it's magic. So any questions about that? Everybody have everything passing without any issue? Okay, sweet. Now we're going to actually run the app, and it's totally going to work, I hope. So we'll go to our terminal, and instead of npm run build, we're going to say npm run start, or simply npm start. And this is going to start the Webpack dev server. So actually, it probably shouldn't use the script for start, because that's generally used to actually like start your server, and you're never going to use Webpack dev server for your actual node server. So I'm gonna. This doesn't really make a difference because I think in the next, like in the actual practice stuff, I call it dev. So you can do this if you want to, but I'm going to change my package.json to, instead of start, it's going to be dev. Oops. So that really doesn't make a difference because when we check out the next branch, it's going to do that anyway. But yeah, if you go ahead and look at localhost 8080, that's the default port, you'll see that your app is running. And if you look at the network tab, you'll see that we're, you'll have to hard refresh. What are we doing? Hold on a second. Oops. What on earth is this? Oh, sorry. One other thing. Yeah, thank you. Who said that? Somebody give that man a high five. Yeah, so we need to change our index file. So we're still loading the old stuff, all the old require and all that stuff. So we're going to say script source is bundle.js. And then we can get rid of the old script, and if we save that, then we'll go and refresh in the browser, and you'll see that we're only loading the bundle, and then we asynchronously load the bundle, the one.bundle. And we're loading this learn.json thing, which is a to-do MVC thing that, like, don't worry about that. So, somebody had a question.
Yeah, so I actually forgot the question.
You what?
So what I was asking is like, forget. I'll ask later.
Okay.
I remember it.
Can you show the changes again?
Oh, in the index, yeah. So you're just going to replace that original script with a simple script that loads the bundle.js.
What's the base.js? That's not modularized.
Oh yeah, sorry. That's also a to-do MVC thing, and we could actually, yeah, heck, it's going to get blown away when we check out the next branch. But what you would do if you wanted to bring that in is you would simply go to this file, and we could continue doing the regular old require as a AMD style, but I actually prefer the CommonJS style. And so we'll simply say require, and it'd be to do MVC common / base. And then we could get rid of this script tag. So for extra credit, you can do that. And that should, we have that base right there, we refresh, we no longer have that base, but the whole app works and it's magic.
What is the difference between the one.bundle and bundle.js?
So the this syntax here, this AMD syntax, is a way to tell Webpack that I want to load these modules asynchronously, and when they're done, call this function and pass those as dependencies, right? So Webpack has to split the resulting bundles up into separate files so that it can do that asynchronous loading. Does that make sense?
Webpack handle it itself.
Yeah, Webpack takes care of all of that. You don't have to worry about it. Isn't that magic?
And internally, like Webpack is also creating a node server because right
Yeah.
now we are creating a server. So
Yeah, so you wouldn't ever use this in production. This is a
Yeah.
development-only server, but it makes developing locally really handy.
yeah,
So in this scenario, though, like you're like running your Kraken server, and then in addition, you're running this Webpack dev server. So like you have to remember to run both. But there is middleware, and I know nothing about Kraken, but I know that there's middleware for having Kraken run the Webpack dev server. So you can just say, hey, Kraken, run this thing for me, and it's all great and black box.
Yeah, so
yeah.
all the dependency will be in one.bundle.js, and then whenever it's needed in bundle, it will be requiring basically exactly like how it's required.
Yep, exactly the same. And
But
so
we included only bundle.js, right?
that's right. Yep. Yeah, it's just like Require. So with Require, you include your main file, and then Require will go and get all this stuff. But I imagine when you build your project, you're using RJS and you're like concatenating stuff and doing all that. So you have to manage where your split stuff happens, like where you're splitting your app. You don't have to manage that with Webpack. You just like it just magically happens. It's awesome.
And at the end, it create only one file as a bundle, and then how
It'll
does it matter?
so if it has in this scenario, like this is going to be all these dependencies will be loaded asynchronously. So it's going to say, okay, I need to load these things, and it's obviously you have a ton of modules, and so it has to figure out, okay, what things can I put together to have loaded at the same time based off of the thing its dependence, and so it takes care of all of that for you, optimizes that for you. For an app that isn't like enormously ginormous, I would not recommend doing lazy loading. I don't really think that it's all super useful. Like you're doing a whole bunch of round trip requests to the server to get JavaScript files and assets. So generally, and what we're going to do with this small app is we're going to get rid of all the asynchronous stuff, and we're just going to wind up with a single bundle. And yeah, it'll be super fast. But what's really cool is that Webpack supports this kind of stuff, and it'll manage all that for you. So if you do need to do lazy loading of assets, you can, and it's really awesome. So I know it's really hard to accept because it's just so amazingly awesome, but cool. So any other questions? I can't remember. I'm not done at 4:30, am I? I'm done at 5:30. Okay. Oh, okay. That's step 1 out of 10. We are going to move a little bit faster. And I apologize about that. Oh, sorry, one other thing that we can get rid of before we are done with this first step is we no longer need this. So we can get rid of it. That is, I don't know, like 20 or 30 lines of code that we replaced with 15 lines of Webpack. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Thanks, Webpack. And it's even easier than before. Not to, like, say Require.js is lame, but it's not as cool as Webpack. So, awesome. Great. I think that we're good to, let me just double check the diff here that I didn't miss anything. So that was the only thing we, actually you'll notice that require config, removing that require config is the only thing that we had to do in our code base to start using Webpack. What? So it's quite probable or likely that you might actually have to touch some of your files depending on certain like circumstances, whatever you need. But for the most part, you want to try and avoid touching your files just so you don't have crazy merge conflicts and stuff. I'm pretty sure that we've got everything for our first steps. So let's go ahead and check out that next branch so that we're all on the same page. So go ahead and stop your server, say git checkout -f to get rid of all your stuff. I know you worked hard, but it's okay. And you're going to check out, oh, whoops, add Webpack. Forgot to delete that branch. So it is this line with the snowman emoji. That's random every time. So this guy, it's got a smiley face. This one's got a sheep. Life is more fun with emoji. Okay, so if you were lost, never fear. We are all on the same page again. So the next step, let me check my notes really quick, is, oh yeah. So one thing that I really don't like is having to tell Webpack stuff. I'd prefer to just have things be the default behavior. And so, like, for example, this alias stuff, I don't want to have to tell Webpack to alias this to this. So we are actually going to go and refactor some of our source code so that we don't have to have this alias anymore. So, man, I'm going to jump next time. Okay, so we're going to search for all instances in our app of Backbone local storage. And for some reason, I can't find it, so I can tell you really quickly. Actually, a really quick way to find out when you can get rid of this alias is actually just to remove it and then run your build or npm run dev, and it'll say, oh, I can't find that thing. And then you, oh, okay, it's in the to-dos. So we'll go into our to-dos. We're going to get rid of this. And we're going to take that Backbone local storage, and we're going to simply put a dot and replace the capital L with a lowercase l. If you hit save, then your Webpack build should work magically awesome. Da-na-na-na. Everybody with me there? So you go to the to-dos in your collections. You replace Backbone local storage with the Backbone dot local storage with the lowercase l. And then you can go to your Webpack config. Oops. Pop that open and get rid of that aliases stuff in your resolve. And now our Webpack config is even smaller. And if I get rid of that last line, it's only 12 lines of code. So, sweet. So the next thing, sorry, anybody? Okay, great. Now I'm going to stop really quick for feedback. Am I going too fast or too slow?
It's going at a good pace.
Right pace. Okay, great. Great. That's good to hear when I don't give that as an option. No, just kidding. Okay, so the next thing that I want to fix is having this dot right here. This won't scale very well. What will happen to your applications when you allow developers to do this, and like myself included, is you will wind up putting a whole bunch of stuff at the root, and your root is just going to be a glob full of mess. What you want is to modularize your entire application so that if, like, let's say we had a really, really deep folder structure, and right here I wanted to get something that was like way far up. I would have to do, whoops, that's like commas. I'd have to do this, right? And it would be nuts. And so that's why you're tempted to just say, oh, well, I'll just say the root and then go down. That is convenient, but it doesn't really scale very well because then you wind up with a ton of stuff at the root and you have no idea like what actually is being used where. And so what's better is to ensure that most everything is being referenced relatively, because it makes the dependency even more explicit. And so what we're going to do, and then what that encourages is like you're not going to wind up with crazy stuff like this quite as much, because you like if you do wind up with stuff like that, then you'll figure out another way to accomplish that same thing. And there are other ways that Webpack allows for, and we probably won't get to that today, so my apologies for that. But what we're going to do then is get rid of this dot thing, and this we are again going to have to touch our code. So this would be like something that you do over a weekend when nobody knows what's going on, and you come back and everybody's like, whoa, everything's relative now. Yeah, say you're welcome. Okay, so we'll go ahead and in our Webpack config, I removed that dot from our modules directories, and then because the modules directories defaults to simply node modules, we can actually get rid of this configuration altogether. And now we're just left with the context, the entry, the output, the file name, and yeah, that's it.
So what did you change for module directories? Like you just removed it?
So yeah, the first step was just to remove the dot, and then after I remove that dot, I actually no longer need the node modules anymore because that's the default. And so I don't need to specify node module or modules directories at all anyway. And because this resolve object is empty, I don't need it either. So just get rid of all that stuff. So now if we run npm run dev, we're going to get a whole 2 errors because these are not relative, and so we'll just go through and make them relative. So this will take some time depending on your code base to do. So we'll just go ahead and do that really quickly. We'll go to here we have our collections, to-dos, so we're going to go up one directory for this guy. Actually, you know what? This is tedious stuff. Let's, you understand, go through, make it all work, and let's move on. So go ahead and check out the next branch. Check out step 02, clean things up, and you'll want to add a -f to get rid of all of your hard-earned work.
02.
Step /02 hyphen add.
Yeah, check out. Yeah, it's just like that.
Clean things up.
Oh, clean things up. Oh, okay, got it.
Okie doke. So, oh yeah, okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is, I actually really prefer to, oh, whoops, well, you'll notice that resolve came back. My bad, don't worry about it. It doesn't need to be there, but it doesn't hurt. So, one thing that I prefer not to do is, wow, I've got a bunch of stuff open. Let's get this stuff out of here. Is I prefer to avoid doing this fancy require or like define, require thing because it's like weird looking and whatever. And so, and the other thing is you have to do that everywhere you're getting a HTML file. And so what we're going to introduce to you now is something called loaders. So we've already installed a loader called the text loader. And so we're going to, instead of specifying that this thing should go through the test loader, we're going to configure Webpack and say anything that ends in a .html we want to go through the text loader. That way we don't have to specify it every single time. And then there's additional awesomeness associated with that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new property to our config called module. And under module, we're going to have loaders, and this is an array of loader objects. So, a few things. We need to configure Webpack to say, I want you to, anytime you find a file where its file name ends in .html, I want you to load it through this text loader thing. And then we're going to do an optimization to say, I don't want you to load anything from the node modules directory because we don't want it to process that. So we're going to say test, and this will be a regex to say anything that ends in .html. And then we'll specify our loaders as an array of strings. And we're going to load through the text loader. And then we'll exclude anything in the node modules, anything where the file name matches node modules. So don't name any of your files node modules. That'd be really weird anyway. So. And with that, you should actually be able to rerun your build or npm run dev, and everything will continue to work, even though we've configured things this way. It should work just fine.
Is there a way where we can specify only when you load HTML file from this folder, then only do this, otherwise don't do that?
Yeah, so you can get pretty fancy with this test stuff. You also have this include and there's also exclude, and so you could get fancy with your exclude regex.
Oh.
And then, yeah, and if you had a scenario where something was just really crazy special, what I generally do for situations like that is I will name it something special. So I'll say that instead of to-dos, we're going to call this to-dos super special .html. And then in my configuration, I'll say, hey, anything that doesn't include super special, I want you to do this thing. So, or exclude anything that has super special in the file name. So, good question. Any other questions?
If you have more than one entry point, can you restrict some loaders to be used
Like per entry?
Specific entry, yeah, per entry.
That is an excellent question. Sorry, what's your name?
Hussein.
Jose? Hussein is talking about the fact that you can actually have more than one entry here. And you can, I think it's actually an array. But that's something that I have actually never had a use case for. So I've never really done it. So I don't know if there's a way to say, for this entry, use these loaders. What I would maybe do is potentially have multiple Webpack configs. Because on the CLI, you can specify a Webpack config. And yeah, that would be a solution. Might not be the best one. Another thing that you could do is, well, yeah, I don't know. That's something to look into, though.
Actually, I have seen something like that in that people check for environment, and if environment is dev, use this entry point or this output, and if environment is this, you can use this like other input or other output.
Yeah, we're actually going to, we're going to use that a little bit. I like to leverage environment variables a lot. So yeah, awesome. Any other questions? Are you guys like super like, this is so fun, I'm having a good time? All right. I hope so. I want you to have fun. I think it's fun. Okay, cool. So one problem here is that now, well, actually, it's not a problem. Now we're going to go and clean up all of our code that has that text exclamation point stuff. And we're not going to do that right now because that's just tedious. So we'll just leave it as it is right now. And when we check out the next branch, we'll, yeah, that'll work fine. So one other thing that we need to do is the reason that we installed the text loader in the first place was because we wanted to not have to change any of our code because it was using the text loader already. But now that in our minds, you don't have to do this, but I'll just do it really quick. Now that we've taken out, the text stuff and it's all being configured in our Webpack config, now we don't need the text loader itself. And the reason that we don't necessarily want the text loader is because this thing is not maintained. This text loader was created explicitly for the purpose of migrating from React to Webpack. And so it's not maintained, it just kind of, it sort of works, but if there were bugs, then we would be in trouble. So what we want instead is the HTML or the raw loader, which is the official package. And so let's go ahead and install that really quick. npm install as a dev dependency the raw loader. And presumably that should install 0.5.1. This is maintained by the official Webpack team. And with that done, we can go to the Webpack config and swap out text for raw. And you should be good to go. Run dev, npm run dev. And everything works and it runs through the proper loaders and we can still say hello world. Hello world. So any questions about that? Awesome. Great. So I hope that what we've covered so far is like very applicable to what you are all doing day to day, because I'm pretty sure you're all using text and you're all like doing these things. So hopefully this is valuable. Okay, so go ahead and let me just check on. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to do is load CSS. Yeah.
So in the module loaders configuration, it says loader is text.
Yeah, and you swap that for raw.
So how does it know which node module to pick?
Good question. So another way, maybe this will be illustrative. So another way to specify these loaders is with text-loader. And so basically what Webpack is going to do is it's going to say, oh, okay, I see that you want the text loader. I'm going to load that from node modules. But because most of the node modules for loaders in Webpack are called like whatever the thing is dash loader, then they just added this really handy thing where you can just omit the loader. So pretty fun and handy and good. Okay, let's check out the next branch. Step 03 called loaders. Yeah, chugging right along. We hopefully, oh good. So we have CSS, and then we're going to add tests and set up the tests. Then we'll we'll skip over adding tests. So I didn't notice that the to-do MVC guys hadn't actually added tests to this project. So I added tests in this step. We'll skip over that step, and we'll talk about setting up tests with Webpack. But right now we're going to talk about loading CSS. So if you recall from this handy-dandy graphic, we're loading our JavaScript stuff, and we're loading our HTML, not Jade, but we're not yet loading our CSS stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. So CSS is one of the beasts of the web. I think that Crockard would agree, based off of his talk last night. But one of the problems with CSS is like the entire thing is implicit dependencies, and so with Webpack it makes it a lot easier to depend on things a little bit more explicitly, and we'll talk about that a little bit further if we can possibly get to CSS modules on step 10 in the next 50 minutes. So all that we actually really need to do, if we look at our index.html, this is a pretty small app, so we only have 2 CSS files, and you know, I'm sure that you have many, and you can compile them all together, and you have like less or something. So we won't really get into that. Maybe we will. But we're going to, instead of just including these on our index.html, we're going to require these into our JavaScript, and then the JavaScript is going to inject that CSS into the DOM at runtime. So, and there are like no performance problems whatsoever with that, so don't worry about it. So let's first go to our main file. So this index.html is like our main for the app. The main file is our main file. So it kind of makes sense if we're going to put this in JavaScript to put it in our main file. So we'll go into here, into our main.js, and let me actually open this up also. And at the very top, we're just simply going to say require to-do MVC common / base.css. Then we'll do the same for the other apps, CSS, index.css. And you'll notice this is common.js syntax as opposed to our friends AMD. I totally recommend and prefer common.js over AMD, so that's one of the other things that we're going to be switching, or that we would switch from. Even better is once we implement ES6 transpiling, then you can use ES6 modules, which will be better than that. If it can be.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if we just change the style, then get common like AMD to common.js, would it change the way it loads also?
Yes, it would. So if you need asynchronous loading, you can either do it the AMD way with the require with the array, or you can say require.ensure, and I'm actually not sure of that syntax, but there's an alternative way. So either way is just as effective, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. You could even say require. Actually, this is kind of an interesting thing I just discovered last night. So you can say require array function that takes no arguments, and then in here we could say var backbone equals require backbone. And Webpack is smart enough to know, oh, this is in some sort of asynchronous thing, and so I'm going to put this backbone into another bundle because that'll be loaded asynchronously. And so, hooray, goodbye are the days where you have a million of these and you have to line up those function arguments. Who's felt that pain? Yeah, that's like the worst. I spent like 20 minutes last night debugging that problem because I haven't worked in Backbone in a long time. And
I have another question.
Yeah.
As you just said, like if we do some with AMD and some with common patterns, so Webpack is going to bundle them in separate bundle files.
Not necessarily. It only bundles them separately if you do the asynchronous style.
Asynchronous
Yeah.
style. But in the output folder, like we have like in the output directory or like the configuration, we have only given the one bundle JS file. So
Mhm.
how it's going to bundle separately when we have given only one bundle?
Yeah. So if you look here, you'll see that our bundle.js is what we configured. It also adds this one.bundle.js. And so as part of this bundle.js, it creates, it says, okay, so you told me you want bundle.js, but I'm actually, because you have asynchronous stuff, I'm going to chunk these into separate bundles, and then I will manage loading that. So all you have to make sure of is that you send that to your CDN or whatever you're using to ship your stuff, and make sure that it's available as at the same place the bundle is available. So, excellent question. Okay, so now we're requiring our CSS files. We can get rid of those from our index, and we have one problem. We are not yet informing Webpack how to consume these CSS files. And so if we go ahead and run our build, we're going to get a terrible error where it says module parse failed. You're parsing my CSS, but you're treating it like JavaScript. What is your problem? And we're going to say, I don't have a problem. I just forgot to do something. So we're going to add another loader. And so you can just copy that line. We're going to say anything that ends in CSS is going to be loaded through. Okay, so before I say what loaders it's going to be loaded through, let me explain what happens. So there are two loaders we're going to load it through, the CSS loader and the style loader. And so the CSS loader is going to take our CSS file and basically turn it into a string. And then we'll load it from that to the style loader, which is responsible for loading it into the browser in a style tag whenever it's required. And so, yeah, that's basically what it does. So loaders in Webpack run from right to left. And so the last thing that we want to have happen is the thing that we're going to put first. So we'll say style. We want it to load as a style tag. So we'll use the style loader to do that. And then the thing that we want to happen just before that is the CSS loader. So we'll load it through the CSS loader to turn it into a string, and then the style loader takes it. Does that make sense? Awesome. So if we had preprocessors, which we don't, but if we did, then we would add less for the less loader, or we could add stylus. Who uses stylus here? Nobody? I like stylus, but yeah. SAS? SCS, or I don't even know. I've actually, is it SCSS?
SCSS.
Yeah. Well, that crazy thing, and then the next new hotness is post CSS. Yeah, post CSS is cool. So we don't have any of those preprocessors, but that's how it works, is you just pile these things on. So now, actually, I think you should all have all the modules the NPM modules you need. Like, you installed all those things right from the get-go, I think. So you shouldn't have to NPM install. But what you would install is the CSS loader, and that would go into your dev dependencies. But go ahead and just try and restart your server, and it should have it. Just kidding, it doesn't. Yeah, you're going to need it. So sorry, I'm just like talking. I don't know what I'm talking about. CSS loader and style loader. I actually only sort of like the little spinner thing that they put in Node or NPM 3. I liked version 2's better. I don't know, but you know, whatever. Okay, so now if we run npm run dev, we're gonna get another error. Oh dear, what's wrong? You may need to appropriate loader, load all, test CSS loaders.
Oh, I think those.
Oh, they're sorry.
Included in one.
Yeah, thank you. So those are actually in the node modules directory, which your code would not normally be. But if you actually, that's a good point, if you are using third-party code, which is in node modules, which you should be because, like, well, if you have dependencies, they should be loaded in NPM. Don't use Bower because it's Anybody using Bower, actually? Yeah, get rid of Bower. NPM is the bomb. Yeah, so, and actually, sorry, no, this is actually good that you mentioned that to me. So, because you're using Bower and you don't want to touch your code, right, like you want to iterate on this solution, right, you can add to the modules directories, you can say Bower components, and that now you can require stuff just like it was in Node modules, except it's in Bower components. What? And then slowly get rid of Bower because it is dead.
So how does like it search? Does it search with based on what we have given first and second in the array?
Yeah, so order matters in the modules directories. And one thing that I'm not going to really get to specifically, but I use and many people use in their apps, is this concept of shared. So you'll have this, so if you have a directory structure that's a little bit bigger and you want to share things that are like common, then you can add this, and it works basically the same as like when we had the dot. So you can think of the shared directory as being just like node modules. So we could add a shared directory here, and then anything from this models on down in the directory structure, when it requires anything that's not relative, it's going to work its way up the directory structure, and it'll go up one directory, and it says, okay, I'm looking for a shared directory and a node modules directory. I can't find either one, so let me go up a directory. And it'll keep going up. This is exactly how CommonJS resolves modules. It'll keep going up until it finds one of those. And so with a shared directory here, you can add some modules into here, and you can require them without doing a bunch of dot back, all that crazy stuff. But you just be careful and judicious about how much you use that, because it can make your code a little bit less maintainable. But it's useful when used properly. So, excellent questions. I like questions. I think they're helpful for everybody. Okay, so now with our loader stuff set up properly, we restart our server because we changed our configuration. Everything should be loading, and it is. Do you believe in magic? Yeah, totally working. And so a couple of interesting things. As I said, our CSS is no longer link tags with the style sheet ref, but they're now actual style nodes. And so like you'll see all of our styles are just like right there. And it's kind of crazy, and I'll tell you, if we go to like this to-dos and we see the style stuff in our dev tools, we're going to be like, oh, I need to debug this thing. Oh, shoot, like this stinks. I don't want to debug this. It doesn't make any sense. So this is a problem, and but there's a solution. The style loader has, or I think it's a CSS loader, has a source maps configuration, and it's not something you want turned on for production because it adds a runtime and it like does some weird things. I haven't ever used it because I generally don't have much trouble debugging with what I have here. The other nice thing is if we can get to CSS modules, then we'll be able to talk about how to scope your CSS down to very, very specific components, and yeah, that just makes it a lot easier to understand where these different things are coming from, and you don't really need to debug, or I haven't had any need to debug these style tags because that would be like crazy. So, any other questions about CSS? Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and check out the next branch. What is the next branch? Yeah, it's 04 CSS. Step 04-CSS. Oh, whoops. And you'll do that with -f to get rid of your stuff. By the way, at the end of this, I'm going to hold you all ransom until you fill out a feedback form for me. So be prepared. Just kidding, I won't hold you ransom. Okay, so our next thing, actually, sorry, the next thing is we're going to set up a bunch of tests, and all that I did was I added some crazy tests. I added Mocha, Chai, and Sign-On. Who here uses Mocha? Does anybody use Mocha to write tests? Yes! That's awesome. Who uses Jasmine? Oh, great. I came to a Mocha shop. That's awesome. Yeah, I like Mocha a lot. So Oh, that's good. I thought you guys would all be on or y'all would be on Jasmine. Jasmine's cool too. So yeah, we're just adding tests. So let's go ahead and check out that branch so we can skip ahead. So it will be step 5, add test. So check out step 5, add test. Sorry about that. And now we're going to set up our karma stuff. Who does not use karma? It's okay if you don't. What do you use to run your tests? You just run them?
Yeah.
Is it like, do you run them in a browser or?
No, command line.
Oh, okay. Do you use the Mocha CLI? Oh, okay. Well, good for you. That's great. I would love to run my tests like that. But if you need to run them in a browser, Karma is the best. So in our scenario, we're going to run them in a browser. That thing! What is? It's okay. It's actually kind of the comic relief for this whole thing. So that's okay. You made it worse. No, just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to need to remind myself, how do I do this? So we're going to, you know what? Y'all have seen a karma config before, right? We don't need to build this karma config together. We can look at the code. And this too. So let's go ahead and, sorry, I keep changing my mind. Let's check out the next branch, which has the tests all set up. And then we'll walk through the code because I have other things that I'd prefer to look at. Hopefully nobody has a problem with that. Was anybody desperately hoping to watch me configure karma? Okay, great. So there are a couple of interesting things that we're doing though. Actually, if we look at our Webpack config, what happened here? Setup tests. Hold on a second. Wait a second. Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, I was thinking about adding code coverage. But that is not what we're doing quite yet. Okay, so all that we do is in our, refresh this guy, in our karma config, we're going to require our Webpack config, and we're going to provide that to our karma configuration so that the Webpack plugin can take that configuration and know what to do with it, and know what to do with our files. The other thing is that we're going to add a preprocessor for all of our test files, and we're going to preprocess them all through Webpack. So it will basically be, each one of our test files will be an entry for Webpack, and Webpack will take our configuration, run it on that particular file, and then that's what the resulting test file that will be loaded into the browser will be. So yeah, does that make sense? So sorry, I should have shown what this test is. So we have our models and our to-do and our to-do test. And if we look at the to-do test, it simply requires the to-do, and then it makes a couple to-dos and makes some assertions. So I've actually, out of curiosity, because like I will be working here and I'm interested. So where do you all generally put your test files? Do you have a source directory and a test, or you put it right just like this? Source and test? All right. We're gonna, I'll see if we can change that. So actually, out of curiosity also, do you find that it's difficult to make sure that they're up to date and synced? Yeah, this is great, right? Woohoo! Rallying the troops. So this is actually very, very nice because now I know everything that I need for this to-do thing. And if I had my way, I would actually move these templates to these views, and then like I would totally restructure this thing. But it's a small app, so whatever. Okay, sweet. So I think that's pretty much all that's special about this. One pro tip, if you use Karma and you are used to using Chrome as your browser, who does that actually? Does anybody use Chrome for the browser? So have you noticed that it can run dog slow sometimes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I found out that the reason for that is Chrome has this optimization that is actually really cool when it's not the window in the forefront like this. If it's behind something, then it is going to say, oh, the user doesn't care about me, so I'm going to deallocate myself from memory. And so it like time stands still for Chrome, and so do your tests. So use Firefox instead. And if you ever need to debug and stuff, Firefox has awesome debug tools, but I don't get them at all, and so I switch to Chrome if I need to debug my tests. So that's a fun little pro tip. Sweet. Any questions about setting up the test? It really is a matter of installing the Webpack or the Karma Webpack plugin, and then pulling in your Webpack config and specifying it right here, and then specifying preprocessors for your for all of your files, pretty much. So, sweet. Okay. I think that was good to just run through, because that would have been pretty tedious. Oh my gosh, are you guys so excited? I keep saying you guys. Are you all so excited to start using ES6? Especially after Jamin's thing this morning and like all the ES6 stuff that's going on. And guess what? Like ES 2016 is just around the corner. It's got like all these cool things. Yeah, I'm really excited. And I haven't used straight up ES5 since January. So it's weird for me to say var or require even. So we're going to add ES6. So let me review, because it's not entirely straightforward. Okay, so we're going to install a couple of things. We'll say npm install as a dev dependency, Babel core, Babel loader, and I feel like there's one other thing. Oh yeah, and Babel preset, is it preset? Yeah, ES 2015. So, who's familiar with the crazy thing that happened between Babel 5 and Babel 6? Yeah, you felt the pain. I felt the pain. It actually wasn't super painful, but it was a little painful. And lots of people think that it's really painful. But basically, Babel 5 and Babel 6 had a huge breaking change, and they totally do things differently. Babel is no longer a transpiler. It is a platform for JavaScript tooling. But it also comes with this cool idea of presets. And so there is tooling now for Babel to transpile code. And that's how you accomplish that with these presets. And so that's why we're installing that Babel preset ES 2015. So then we need to configure Babel to use this preset that we have that we're installing now. And that is configured via a .babelrc file. So it's .babelrc, and this is an object with a property of presets as an array of ES 2015. I think that's what it is. Let me double check my stuff. Yes. So everybody on the internet is complaining about how hard it is to configure Babel, and I look at them and I think, but there were a couple other things that made it really difficult for some people. So yeah. Great. So now we have all of the dependencies we need. We have our Babel configured. Now we need to configure Webpack to say, hey, when you're loading those JavaScript files, I want you to do a couple of things to them first. And you would do the same thing if you were using CoffeeScript or TypeScript or anything else. And it's just like our other loaders. So we're going to add another loader, except I want to copy this one because it has my exclude. And instead of HTML, we're going to say anything ending in JavaScript we want run through the Babel loader. Do you know how long that would have taken me if I had done this in Grunt or Gulp? We would not be able to do it that quickly and easily. And man, Webpack is amazing. So, awesome. That should actually work. So if we run npm run dev, there we go. We go to our app, and everything's working. So I think I just broke my foot. Oh man. Well, it was bound to happen. Cheap flip-flops. Good thing I brought shoes. Okay, so is everybody... have I lost anybody, like totally? Okay, sweet. Hopefully having these branches is helpful. So, yeah, who is here transpiling with Babel and their app is working? Awesome. A couple people. Does anybody want help with their stuff?
Which branch you are in?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so right now we are on the setup test branch. Whoop. Yeah. 06 setup tests under step 06 setup test. Test. So what's actually super cool about this right now is with the Babel loader going through all of our JavaScript files. Now we can actually start using ES6, and it's just like magical. So let's go ahead and I don't even remember what I did in last night. But let's take this, and we're going to switch these to import statements instead. So we'll go like this. We'll say import, and we can actually import this CSS stuff because Babel is going to transpile this down to common.js, and then Webpack will take over from there to resolve dependencies. And so then we can say import backbone from backbone, and we'll do the same for these guys. Whoops. Import thing from that. And we're gonna go back and change those. App view and workspace, and then we'll get rid of these couple lines and that line, and we'll go. Oops. There we go. It is ES6ified. And now we no longer need this. We also don't need use strict because ES6 is in use strict mode. It's implied based off of the contents of your file. So it sees an import and it's like, oh sweet, I can be in strict mode. Or it sees a class, or it sees an arrow function and it says sweet. So we don't need that anymore. And now, hallelujah. So we see that our main has been recompiled right here, and we refresh and everything is still working. Hooray! Bye, my Vim friend. Well. Okay, so any questions about that? Okay, so this is not an ES6 workshop. I have given an ES6 workshop, and it's been recorded, so you can go watch it, and it's awesome, I think. Maybe I should not think so highly of myself. But some people told me that they thought it was awesome. So you can go watch that and learn about a lot of the features of ES6. And I will be working here, so you can ask me questions too.
Do you have a link to that?
Yeah, I'll have a bunch of links at the end in my slides. Right here. Boom. So I think that is it. The rest of this stuff is to leverage some ES6 features. And then the last thing is to ES6ify our Webpack and Karma configs, which we can do really quickly and easily. So once you start writing ES6, you can't go back. It's like, I can't write ES5 anymore. This is nuts. And so when I come in here and I'm like, oh, var require exports, like, oh, what is this? It makes me sad. So I want to just write this in ES6. So Webpack is actually pretty neat, and you can just call it webpack config.babel.js, and whoops, babbly, whoops, move babel. Oh, whoops, I messed it up. Babel. Wake up. And now, if we go here and we restart our server, everything is still working even though it has a different file name. And now we can start using ES6 in here. So we'll say export default, and we'll import path from path. And I don't even know, other cool things. Like one thing we could do is we could say, do that and say modules directories equals node modules. And now we can leverage the sweet object literal fanciness that we, whoa, I hit caps lock. Don't hit caps lock when you're using them. Yeah, so now like, man, ES6 is just so amazingly awesome. So that's how you do it with Webpack. Unfortunately, Karma is not quite as simple, but it is still pretty easy. So who was in James's last workshop? Just like a couple hours ago. Yeah. So, or no, actually no, this was Jamond. Who was in Jamond's workshop? So Jamond mentioned that in your node stuff you can just say require Babel register in your stuff, and it's like, oh, magically everything is now ES6. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this file to karmaconf.babel.js just to follow with that convention. What just happened? Yes, thank you. And then we're going to make, because Karma isn't smart enough to know that there's a Babel version, it's going to blow up when we try to run the tests. And so we're going to add a karma.conf.js, And in here, we'll say Babel, or sorry, require Babel register. Wait. Now I can't remember. Is it Babel register? It is, yeah, Babel core, because we're using Babel 6. I think he was using Babel 5. So it's Babel core register, and then we can just say module.exports equals require karma conf. And so now from here on out, all other files required can be in ES6, and they'll be transpiled by Babel. And so if we go, oh, whoops, sorry, not conf, but conf Babel. There we go. So then we can go into this file, and we can make changes to that to be ES6. So we could say export default, and we could change this into an arrow function if we wanted, and whatever we want. And now it's all ES6, and yeah, my editor, I don't know how to use Vim, so Webpack config, and then remember it's Babel. So sweet, and everything should totally still work if we run npm test. Oh yeah, I never even ran npm tests yet. Oh shoot, where am I?
He got saved. Config.
Oh, did I? Oh, what on earth is this? I'm so confused. Okay, sorry. You know what we're going to do? This is exactly why I do this. We're going to check out the next branch. For step 07, add ES6. So I'll feel free to do that. It is step 07, add ES6. I feel like we need to do air squats again. Getting kind of tired. Holy cow. I did not ask to be put last, by the way. Okay. Sweet. So now if we load everything, everything should be working. And you can go check out the git diff later and figure out what on earth I did wrong. So if we run npm t or npm test or npm run test, it should fire up Firefox and run all of our tests, and they all passed, and hooray, hurrah. Yeah, and if we npm run dev, then our dev server goes, and the app still works. Hooray! You'll notice, actually, I didn't mention this, but you see that crazy ugly thing right there? Yeah, that's no fun. We don't want that. So the reason that it didn't look like that before is because the JavaScript hadn't even so the CSS had loaded before the JavaScript. And so the CSS was all ready, and then the JavaScript came in and did all the crazy stuff. Now the CSS and JavaScript come at the same time, and the JavaScript, the JavaScript just happens to go into the page before the CSS does. There's really not a good way to get around that. And what ends up happening if we take this to like a big scale is you're going from, let's say it takes 10 seconds. That's crazy, but it takes 10 seconds to get your CSS and then 10 seconds to get your JavaScript. Well, now, because you're packaging it all together and it's on a CDN and everything, you're taking it down to 10 seconds to get everything, JavaScript and CSS. The problem is that the CSS gets applied a little bit later. And so, yeah, maybe the whole app is loading faster, but the CSS takes a second to get applied. So the solution is to add a loading indicator of some kind and have some inline styles in your index to say, hey, we're loading this page. And then the end result is, yes, you have a loading indicator. That's kind of lame, but it's actually ultimately faster than it was before, like in either case. So I'm not going to show you how to do that. You're all creative engineers, and you can figure it out. You can figure out all this stuff. So maybe I should tell you. I don't know. So yeah. Does anybody have questions about ES6, Webpack, and Karma, and whatever that we have so far? Okay, sweet. Are you all super excited to Webpackify all of your stuff so you can use ES6? You know what's really cool is this year we're having a conversation about setting up the tooling for you to have ES6. Next year, we're not going to be talking about tooling because you'll all have it in place, and you'll be using ES 2016, and it will be talking about all the cool features coming in 2018, and it'll just be like, what? Yeah, this is awesome. I love JavaScript in the community. Okay, so a workshop wouldn't be complete without ESLint, so we're going to talk about, okay, he's not here. Douglas Crockford would hate me for this. Which, by the way, I need to say this. So Douglas Crockford's worried about how ESLint and JSHint allow you to reduce the number of rules that you have applied, and so you can write worse JavaScript. Maybe that's the way that JSHint is, but ESLint actually adds rules, so you can do less bad things even than the JSLint. So ESLint is even harder on you than JSLint ever was. So there you go. I really like ESLint. So all that we need to do for ESLint, let me just verify a couple things. So we're going to install ESLint and ESLint loader. I feel like you guys could start teaching me this now because it's like really obvious. And we're going to save those as dev dependencies. Sorry, and while this is loading, how's my pace? I've got 15 minutes left, but am I going too fast or too slow? Have some people, I feel like people have given up on following along. That sometimes happens in my workshops. Is that bad? Like, are you sad that you can't follow along? You want to follow along? Okay, that's good feedback.
If you type in, we are missing your conversation.
Oh, while I'm typing?
My brain.
So,
We are typing.
oh, while you're typing, I should wait and not talk while you're typing. Yeah, I think I just get excited, but that's not an excuse. That's really good feedback. Thank you. Okay, so this is really bothering me. Wake up. Okay, so we are adding ESLint. So we've installed our dependencies. Now we need to configure ESLint, and one of the ways we can do that is with .ESLint.rc. And then in this file we will configure our ESLint, and I'm not going to, you can all look up at docs and figure out how to configure ESLint. Yeah, maybe this is just another run through the code kind of thing. Let's just look at the diff really quick. Okay, so in our package.json we add ESLint and ESLint loader, and then in our Webpack config, before we run our JavaScript through Babel, we're now going to run it through the ESLint loader, which actually does nothing to the code itself. It just pipes it along through to Babel. But while it does that, it does its ESLint checking on it. And so we'll see in a second what that actually does for our development. And then we'll also have this ESLint.rc, which will configure to define our environment, what features of ES or ECMA features we implement, and then our rules. And this rules object can be enormous, and there are tons of plugins and stuff for different rules. So Airbnb has one, jQuery has one, a bunch of different organizations have one. I have one. So if you want to use mine, then that's great. But you can't use semicolons, and you have to dangle your commas. So yeah. Okay, so now let's go ahead and check that branch out really quick. Step 08, ESLint. If you want to follow along, I will wait. I'm so sorry. And once you're finished with that, go ahead and run your dev server. And I think everything passes linting. So go ahead and go into a file and just mess stuff up. Actually, we only have one rule enabled, so you can only mess stuff up in one way. And it is no unexpected multi-line. And the reason I chose that rule is because this is the only time where forgetting to add a semicolon it will bite you. And if you have this enabled in your ESLint, then you will never have a problem forgetting a semicolon. So stop using semicolons. Okay, I didn't say that. Don't tell anybody that. Just kidding, I have a blog post about it, so yeah. Okay, so let's go into, and I'll show you an example of, oh dear, show you an example of where that is actually a problem right here in the router. So let's say we leave off a semicolon here, and since we don't have any rules specifying semicolons, it's not going to yell at us. But here we're going to say param or like foo to lowercase. So now ESLint is going to yell at us because we have an unexpected new line function. So we'll get an error, it'll tell us the module it's in, it'll tell us the line number it's on, and like we'll get a summary of our errors. So that's pretty handy. And the reason that this is a problem is because when the compiler comes around, it's going to say, oh, did you mean to, well actually what it's going to do, the AST is going to add a semicolon here. But what you might have meant to do is to invoke a function off of this. So like it might not be what your intent was. And so that's why it's dangerous. And that's why you turn this rule on, and then you don't have to use semicolons, and it's awesome. Yep, and now everything is up and good. So you can toy around with adding rules and stuff and like breaking it, and you'll see the errors should be relatively like explanatory. Any questions about that? Sweet. Yeah, thanks. Okay, coverage and CSS modules. I don't believe that I have time to cover them both. So, CSS modules solves a lot of the problems with CSS that we have today, and it's the next hotness after like sliced bread. I don't know. It's really cool. And code coverage, everybody here is aware of code coverage, and we all care about code coverage because we're good, solid testing developers. So which one of these are you more interested in talking about? Modules, CSS modules? Going once, going twice. All right, sweet. So we're going to skip code coverage, and so we'll go ahead and check out that branch. Step 09, coverage. I'll give you a quick spoiler for that. So with the code coverage, you have to instrument your code. You're probably all using Istanbul right now for covering your JavaScript unit tests and stuff. So Istanbul doesn't understand ES6, and so that's a problem because our code is in ES6. And so there's another module called Isparta that uses Istanbul, but it understands ES6, and so it'll instrument your code for you, and Istanbul will take care of the rest. So that's the basic idea, and so we have an Istanbul loader, and that's, yeah, and then we just say take our regular JavaScript files and load it through the Istanbul loader instead of Babel. So pretty handy. Okay, so for CSS modules, let me just review my notes here really quick. We're going to go into our Babel config, or our Webpack config to add support for CSS modules. So here's all that magic stuff I was telling you about. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Booyah. So we want to apply CSS modules only to our stuff rather than the stuff that's in node modules. And so I'm going to create another copy of this. And then we're going to, on this one, exclude node modules. Okay, I'll stop talking. Okay. So for the one where we're excluding node modules, we also want to include node modules in some way. And so we're going to say for this guy, include, if I could spell, node modules. Okay, so now we have two things that are like running totally different code paths, doing basically the same thing. The difference is the one that excludes node modules, we're going to say modules. So this is kind of a funny like query param syntax, but that basically just says, hey, CSS loader, I want you to treat my CSS files like they're CSS modules. So you can configure your entire loader using this string, and it's kind of crazy and weird syntax, but it's something that can be learned. So great. So before I get into actually implementing something with CSS modules, let's go ahead and take
Isn't the third sentence by default gonna include node modules?
the
Load, CSS loader.
sorry, what? This one?
No,
Or-
the next one. If they just remove the include, it's gonna do it for them.
Right.
We need include. I mean, I don't know.
So if you remember, we have this. That's a good question. In our main right here, we need to pack these two because they're in node modules, and so we do need to have one of these loaders that actually does load from our node modules, but it doesn't have CSS modules, and so we don't want to turn on CSS modules for that one. Does that make sense? Or is that like really confusing? Okay, so the difference between these two loaders, there's two differences. We have the modules on this one, and it excludes node modules. And the reason for that is if we just turn CSS modules on for all CSS that we include, then stuff that isn't using CSS modules would have some trouble. And so we're only going to turn on CSS modules for stuff that is not in our dependencies, but only in our code. And these are two files that are our dependencies, so they're going to be just piped through the regular CSS loader. That makes sense? Hopefully. I'm so sorry if it doesn't. Okay, so before we get into actually implementing CSS modules, let's take a look really quick at this article, which is, we're just going to scan through it. Okay, you all understand? Thank you. No, just kidding. The main thing that I wanted to point out is, like, this indicates 7 problems with CSS at scale, and this actually comes from a slide deck called CSS in JS from Christopher Shadow on the React team, and he created this slide or this talk to explain why they're doing inline styles in React, because it solves all of these different problems like global namespace and dependencies and all this minification crazy stuff. So Glenn Mettern and several other awesome people, I don't even know, but they thought, I think we can actually enhance CSS and make it in such a way that it can solve all of these problems. And so that's what the CSS module specification is all about, and Webpack CSS loader implements that specification. My favorite part about this website or this article is that if you look at the Elements tab, all of the classes are emoji, and that's done because CSS modules actually generates the class name, and he's configured it to generate class names that are emoji. Yeah, that to me is just like mind-blowingly awesome as an emojist myself. So anyway, that's so I didn't really talk about the some of the features of CSS modules, and I'm not going to have time to, but we'll implement a couple of things. Well, you know what, we don't have any time at all, so we're going to look at a git diff really quick to see what this actually does for us. I'm so sorry. So here we have our to-dos CSS, and we have this Christmas text thing. Normally, like if you're a sane person, you're going to do your CSS selectors like kebab case, right? Like that's the normal thing to do. Well, I'll explain why we're doing camel case right here in a moment. But here we say Christmas text is color is green and the background is red, and then here we have this weird local thing, and then this CSS selector to-do label, and it says it composes Christmas text. Now that's interesting, and then it has a background that's different from that background. Okay, so what these are just two features of CSS modules. So this local thing basically means I want you to garble this class up in a million different pieces, whatever, like generate whatever emoji, and then when I require this file, you're going to give me back an object that has a key called to-do label and the value being whatever was generated. And so what you can do with that then is when you import those styles, you get an object with that key of to-do label, and then in your template, this is a template literal, that's a backtick. So in your template you can say, hey, this label has a class, and then I'm going to interpolate the name of that class, to-do label. So we say that styles object, get me that to-do label property, and that's going to be some weird string, and then I have those styles applied. And so you have guaranteed isolation, you have guaranteed, like you don't need to worry about people overriding your styles or like anything crazy about CSS that we totally hate, because you import that directly from the CSS modules, and it'll give you the object with the classes that you need, and you don't care what they end up being, you just apply them directly where they need to be. So let's look at really quickly just at the end result, just because that's kind of fun. We'll pull that out and npm run dev. And if we refresh here, we see it looks like Christmas. Yay! What's really interesting about this though is if we look at the label, it has this crazy class name stuff. So this is the Christmas text class, and because our label text composes that, it actually applies both of those classes together, and this one wins because it's like the specific one for what we're looking for. So
it's different for different build or different type?
yeah, it'll be different every time. So we have _2hash. If I rerun this dev server, it will be exactly the same. I don't even know. Don't rely on it. So one question that I've been asked though before by people is like we use CSS selectors for our protractor tests or our end-to-end tests, Selenium tests. So like how do you deal with that? Because like that would be really annoying to have your test break every time you ship something new. And yes it would. So what I recommend, where am I even? Right here. So what I recommend is if you need some special selector to get to something for a test, I just say label or like super special label, whatever. And so like I prefix it with an underscore, and that says, hey, this is private, right? You know, remember the good old days. And this is going to be used for testing purposes. So any questions about CSS modules? There's a lot more to learn about CSS modules. It just like this enables that kind of thing.
So was the reason not to do dash separated just because your .NET notation?
Yep, because it's just easier to write this than this. Yeah. Yep. I didn't really talk about it, and I said it would, so thanks. Any other questions? Webpack is great. Thanks for sticking around. I know it's not easy on any day to stay this late, so.
I have a question regarding like when we want to distribute our app and we put like all the JavaScript CSS code on the CDNs. So what exactly we need to put on the CDN after using the Webpack?
So yeah, so the end result, sorry, we didn't really talk about deploying this stuff, and that's probably a whole nother subject, but the end result is you need to take whatever Webpack outputs, and that's what you deploy. And then the only thing that you need to include in your index is the file that you've explicitly labeled as the output. So the bundle.js as the output. So you'll say, so this output file name thing here. And so what's common, and I didn't really show this as much, was there's a path, I think. And in here you'd say path resolve dir name dist, or yeah, dist is pretty common, distributable. And so this would put the bundle in a new folder called dist. And then you, as part of your build process, maybe you copy other static assets like index.html and robots.txt and different things like that. Put all those in dist, and then you take that dist directory, and that's the thing you put up on the CDN.
With people, I don't think this works. You gotta copy whatever is built inside public.js, or whatever is there in public.js get pushed to CDN.
Yeah, but after we're using Webpack, so everything is
So what I ended up doing is like I did the same thing, and then I wrote a grunt task to copy that file from build to public.js.
No, but my question is like, say, when we are using Webpack, so whatever is there in the public folder, anyways, that is going to be compiled and bundled together. So why do we need to copy that again?
But you'll be requiring this bundle.js you'll be loading this bundle.js, right? This will be built during your build time.
Yes.
So that will not be available if you don't push the build, right? So what will get packaged will be the build folder. Right? Whatever get pushed to CDN is inside public.js.
Sorry, I don't know anything about PayPal. But sorry, there are a couple of resources that will be valuable to you. This one specifically should hopefully help with that. So I don't know if Jamin actually ever ended up publishing this, but I found it Googling around. And it's a Webpack Require.js to Webpack Party 1. I think that was supposed to be part. But this is actually really, really helpful, and it has a couple of very specific things like issues with your CDN. There's this special global variable that you can set to help resolve issues. And so if you have questions about Webpack at PayPal, Jamin would be a great person to talk to. And you can get my slides here, and hopefully they're still in the Slack. And thanks, everybody. Please, please, please leave me feedback. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.